EA has come under heavy scrutiny over the past week for royally fucking up what could have potentially been a great Star Wars game. Criticized for its stinginess in awarding in-game currency, for the ridiculous amount of grind required to unlock iconic Star Wars characters, and for its exploitative and predatory loot box progression system that encourages players to gamble their way towards gaining a significant competitive edge, Battlefront 2 has made headlines all over the world through social media, gaming forums, gaming websites, and major media conglomerates. It is arguably one of the greatest and most deserved shit shows in modern gaming, and as I reported in my last video, Disney, owners of the Star Wars IP, was none too happy with EA's handling of Battlefront 2's PR disaster and the negative impact that might have had on the Star Wars brand, especially with The Last Jedi being less than a month out before launch. This ultimately culminated in Disney's chairman of consumer products and interactive media division, Jimmy Pitaro, calling EA CEO Andrew Wilson to express Disney's executives' unhappiness at how the outrage over Battlefront 2 reflected on their marquee property, which was the big push that finally led EA to temporarily turn off microtransactions until they can come up with a better and less controversial system, whatever form that may take. Now, from the perspective of gamers fighting against game publishers' shady practices, the big takeaway from all this was the effect that this all had on what EA values most: the money. Following the announcement that they would be pulling microtransactions just hours before Battlefront 2's launch, in the span of 24 hours, their stocks took a significant 3% nosedive. We also found out that EA's original intention was to sell 14 million copies of Battlefront 2 by fiscal year 2018, but financial analysts predicted that the game's bumpy launch week and underwhelming reception created incremental risks to early unit sales. And now we've got some figures to further indicate that Battlefront 2 may be headed towards a very slippery slope. The following information comes from a recent article from website GameIndustry.biz detailing how Battlefront 2's sales fared throughout its launch weekend in the UK, and so far the results have been underwhelming for EA. According to the article, Week 1 boxed sales in the UK were significantly lower than anticipated, with first week sales being down by more than 50% compared to Battlefield 1 and down 61% compared to 2015's Star Wars Battlefront 1. Results were bad enough that the game only came in at number 2 in UK's top sales chart behind Call of Duty World War II. So not only did Battlefront 2's fiasco put EA in a bad position with their investors, a lot of consumers decided to take matters into their own hands as well, by not purchasing the game, by doing nothing essentially. Now do keep in mind that this data only represents physical sales in the UK. We don't know what sales figures look like in other prominent countries like in the US, and we don't know what the digital sales look like. But even so, a 61% decrease in physical sales compared to the first Battlefront game is a very significant and unprecedented margin. While I'm sure part of it can be attributed to the fact that digital sales are becoming more and more prominent with every passing year, they haven't overtaken physical sales between 2015 and 2017 to a point where it would cause a 61% disparity. It's safe to assume that the gaming community's outrage and the media's extensive coverage of the outrage did in fact play a part in Battlefront 2's sales results, which is a big win for protesting gamers. Now, it's worth noting that to mitigate all the negative PR, EA might try to sell the notion that the game has been a huge success and that it's sold in the millions. But when that happens, just keep in mind that in the world of business, raw numbers aren't all that matter. It's all about sales expectations. We now know that EA wanted to sell 14 million units by the end of fiscal year 2018, so let's say that they managed to sell 10 million copies by then. 10 million is still a significant number, but for EA and its investors, it would be considered a flop, as the company wasn't propelled to the extent that they were hoping for. There's a reason why Justice League, despite having earned a whopping $94 million domestically during its opening weekend, is being called a box office flop. The expectation was that this movie would bring in roughly $110 to $120 million in that pivotal time period, but by falling 15% short of the mark, the highly anticipated film set the tone for a downward spiraling DC cinematic universe. $94 million is not a small feat, but when we're talking about a fucking Justice League movie, yeah, it should have done way better. Kind of the same concept with Star Wars Battlefront 2. This is Star Wars we're talking about, and the expectation was that it would have this big, bombastic debut, but UK sales charts are already showing that it's falling short. All I'm saying is, when EA starts touting about the millions of Battlefront 2 copies that they sold, forget the raw numbers, look at how much the numbers fell short of the original goal. 14 million units was the lofty number EA set out to reach, but with Battlefront 2 facing near universal criticism from consumers and media for its abhorrent loot box system, that goal is unlikely to be met. For all intents and purposes, Battlefront 2 is looking like it will be a flop for EA from a financial standpoint, which serves them right and will hopefully set a precedent for any other greedy game publisher that tries to pull what EA did, especially now that we've managed to tell EA fuck you in the only language they understand: money. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this video insightful, and if you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. All contributions will go towards helping this channel remain 100% independent and self-sustained. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.